The storm roared outside, but within the grand dining hall of Hallowmere Academy, its sound was a distant echo. The enchanted ceiling rippled like the surface of Bone Lake, reflecting each flash of lightning and rumble of thunder in a dreamlike, muted dance. The bonefish mosaics on the floor seemed to writhe in the flickering light, their scales glinting with an otherworldly sheen. Edric Vane sat at one of the long, polished tables, his fingers tracing the runes etched into the silver key in his hand. The metal was cold against his skin, yet it pulsed with a faint, persistent warmth, and as if it were lem, or at least awakening. He had always known the key was special. It had been tucked away in a dented tin box left to him by his grandfather, Eldrin Vane, a relic from a man whose name was only spoken in whispers and warnings. Eldrin had once been a key-bearer, a title that carried both honor and burden. The key-bearers were the silent guardians of the Academy, entrusted with keys to forbidden chambers and sworn to protect Hallowmere's secrets at all costs. But Eldrin's obsession with forbidden runes had led him down a path of ruin. He had been exiled, stripped of his title, and left to die alone. A cautionary tale etched into the Academy's history. Edric's parents refused to speak of him, their silence a wall built from shame and fear. Yet, despite the warnings, Edric had kept the tin box under his bed, a tether to a legacy he didn't fully understand, until now. The dream had come unbidden, vivid and chilling. In it, Edric stood at the edge of Bone Lake, the black waters parting like a curtain to reveal a spiral staircase descending into the abyss. The air was thick with the scent of salt and decay, and a voice, soft, cold, and ancient, whispered, "The key is yours." When he awoke, drenched in sweat and trembling, he found the key nestled among the feathers in the tin, its runes glowing faintly in the darkness. It was as if the key had been waiting for him, summoned by the lake's call. Edric's ember-bright eyes, a rare trait even among the Vanes, flickered with unease as he studied the key. His family's legacy was a heavy cloak, one he wore with pride, but also with a gnawing sense of inadequacy. The Vanes had been among Hallowmere's founders, their bloodline woven into its very foundation. But Eldrin's fall had tainted that legacy, and Edric often wondered if the same madness lurked within him. His parents hoped he would be different, a scholar or a healer, but Edric's heart belonged to the shadows, to the mysteries that lay just beyond the Academy's lantern light. "Edric, you're staring at that box like it's about to sprout legs and dance," Lila Pinch said, her voice cutting through his thoughts. She sat across from him, her long black curls spilling over the pages of her book, Mysteries of the Deep, while she muttered about ancient wards. Lila was his closest friend, a brilliant witch with a mind as sharp as her tongue. They had been inseparable since their first week at Hallowmere, when Edric had accidentally set her cloak ablaze during a potions mishap. Instead of cursing him, she had laughed, her eyes sparkling with mischief, and declared him too chaotic to abandon. Since then, she had been his anchor, though she never hesitated to call him out when he veered toward recklessness. He looked up, meeting her gaze. "It's the key," he said softly, opening the tin to reveal its contents. "I had a dream last night, about a staircase beneath the lake, and when I woke up, the key was there, like it was waiting for me." Lila frowned, leaning forward, her glasses slipping down her nose. "Your grandfather's key?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and caution. "The one he left you?" Edric nodded. "He always said it was important, but my parents thought he was mad. They never believed him." "Well, he was exiled for a reason," Lila pointed out, though her tone mere softened. "But that doesn't mean everything he said was nonsense. Have you tried using it? Not yet, Edric replied, snapping the tin shut with a faint click. But I think it's connected to the West Passage. There's a door there, small, carved with runes, and I've always wondered what's behind it. Maybe this key fits. Lila's eyes widened, a flicker of alarm crossing her face. The West Passage? Edric, that's forbidden. Professor Mallow would skin us alive if she caught us anywhere near there. I know, he said, a grin tugging at his lips despite the tension. That's why we're going tonight. The storm will cover our tracks, and Pippa owes me a favor. She can keep Mallow busy. Lila sighed, pushing her glasses up with a practiced flick. You're going to get us expelled, you know that. Only if we get caught, Edric shot back, his grin widening. Come on, Lila, don't you want to know what's down there? Before she could answer, a shadow loomed over the table. Tobin Grubbs, a stocky boy with sandy hair and a perpetually worried frown, plopped down beside them, a stack of dry black bread cradled in his arms. What's this about getting expelled? He asked, his voice muffled by a mouthful of crumbs. Edric exchanged a glance with Lila, who rolled her eyes but couldn't hide a smile. Nothing, Tobin, she said. Just Edric being his usual reckless self. Tobin swallowed hard, his gaze darting between them. You're not planning something stupid, are you? Because I'm not bailing you out again. Last time, Mallow nearly turned me into a toad. It's not stupid, Edric insisted, keeping his voice low. It's important. I think I've found a way into the West Passage, and I need your help. Tobin groaned, slumping in his seat. Why do I always get dragged into these things? Because you're our friend, Lila said, patting his arm with mock sympathy. And because you're the only one who can eat an entire loaf of bread in one sitting. Tobin muttered something incoherent, but didn't argue. He knew as well as they did that Edric's stubbornness was a force of nature, and despite his grumbling, he couldn't stand the thought of letting them face danger alone. The storm outside raged on, its roar a distant rumble through the Academy's walls. The three of them sat in silence, the weight of their decisions settling over them like the lake's heavy waters. The key in Edric's hand seemed to hum with possibility, a call to adventure none of them could resist. Whatever lay beyond the West Passage, secrets, danger, or something far greater, they would face it together. The mysteries of Hallowmere were stirring, and their journey had only just begun. The hall gradually emptied as students trudged to their dorms, their footsteps echoing in the vast space. Edric, Lila, and Tobin lingered, their whispered conversation blending with the storm's distant growl. The floating lanterns cast long shadows across the tables, their green light flickering like witchfire. Edric's fingers tightened around the key, its runes glinting in the dim glow. He could feel its pulse, steady and insistent, as if it were urging him forward. "We need a plan," Lila said, her voice barely audible over the storm. "If we're really doing this, we can't just waltz into the West Passage without thinking it through." Edric nodded, his mind racing. "Pippa's our best shot at distracting Mallow. She owes me after I covered for her mud bomb stunt in Professor Grindel's class last month." Lila raised an eyebrow. "And you trust her to keep Mallow occupied?" "Pippa's a loose cannon," Edric admitted, "but she's reliable in her own way. Plus, she loves causing chaos. It's practically a hobby." Tobin snorted, crumbs tumbling from his mouth. "Yeah, and getting us all in trouble is her specialty." "She'll do it," Edric said firmly. "I'll talk to her after dinner. We'll meet at the base of Waterclock Tower after lights out. Bring your wand, Lila, and something to keep Tobin quiet." "Oi," Tobin protested, though his voice held more resignation than anger. I'm not that loud, Lila smirked. You panic like a banshee, Tobin. We can't have you screaming if we run into something unpleasant. Tobin paled, his eyes darting to the shadowed corners of the hall. Unpleasant? Like what? You don't think there's actually something down there, do you? Edric hesitated, the memory of the dream flashing through his mind. The parting waters, the staircase, the voice. I don't know, he said honestly. But whatever it is, we'll handle it together. Before they could delve deeper, a sharp voice cut through the air. Talking about me, grubs? Gilly Weaver sauntered over, her blonde braid swinging like a pendulum. She was a year older than Edric, with a smirk that could curdle milk, and a knack for sniffing out trouble. Her family had a long-standing feud with the Vanes, and she never missed a chance to remind Edric of his grandfather's disgrace. Tobin froze, a chunk of bread halfway to his mouth. No, Gilly, just talking about, homework. Gilly's eyes narrowed, her gaze shifting to Edric. Really? Because I could swear I heard something about lights out and sneaking around. Planning something stupid again, Vane? Edric forced a laugh, his hand tightening around the key. Just Tobin's bedtime story. Go scare the first year's Gilly. She lingered, her smirk sharpening, but a loud crash from the kitchens, Pippa's early chaos, no doubt, drew her attention away. With a final suspicious glance, she stalked off, leaving the trio in tense silence. That was close, Lila muttered, her shoulders relaxing. We need to be more careful. If Gilly gets wind of this, she'll have Mallow on us faster than you can say expelled. Edric nodded, his jaw clenched. We'll be fine. Just stick to the plan. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, the ceiling rippling with a particularly violent flash of lightning. Edric's heart pounded in time with the thunder, a mix of fear and excitement thrumming in his veins. The key's warmth spread up his arm, a silent promise of the adventure to come. Time crawled as the academy settled into its nighttime routine. Students shuffled to their dorms, their laughter and chatter fading into the lake's steady hum. Edric lay on his bunk, the tin box tucked under his pillow, his mind too restless for sleep. The storm showed no signs of abating. If anything, it had intensified, the wind howling like a wounded beast. He could feel the academy's walls vibrating faintly, as if Bone Lake itself were stirring in response to the key's awakening. When the floating lanterns dimmed to a soft glow, signaling lights out, Edric slipped from his bed, his cloak pulled tight against the chill. The dormitory was quiet, save for the occasional snore or rustle of blankets. He crept to the door, his boots barely making a sound on the stone floor, and stepped into the mist corridor. The corridor was a marvel of Hallowmere's architecture, its walls coated in a thin layer of enchanted mist that shimmered with faint magic. The mist clung to the stone, forming intricate patterns that shifted like living art. Lanterns floated along the ceiling, their green light casting an otherworldly glow that made the corridor feel both beautiful and haunted. Edric moved quickly, his breath visible in the damp air, the scent of salt and wet stone filling his lungs. He reached the base of Waterclock Tower, where Lila and Tobin were already waiting. Lila's wand was tucked into her belt, its tip glowing faintly, while Tobin clutched a small pouch, undoubtedly filled with breadcrumbs, as if it were a talisman. "Ready?" Edric whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant storm. Lila nodded, though her eyes were wary. "Let's get this over with." Tobin swallowed hard, his gaze flicking to the shadows. "I still think this is a bad idea." Edric clapped him on the shoulder, a reassuring gesture. "We'll be fine, Tobin. In and out, before anyone knows we're gone." They turned toward the narrow corridor leading to the west passage, their footsteps echoing softly in the stillness. The academy's walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing colder with each step. The runes on the key glowed brighter, as if sensing their approach, and Edric's heart quickened in response. The west passage was not a grand entrance, but a small, unassuming stone door tucked into a forgotten corner of the academy. Its surface was carved with runes that matched those on Edric's key, and a frigid draft seeped from the gap beneath it, carrying the scent of salt water and something darker, older. Edric raised the key, his hand steady despite the tremor in his chest. The runes on the door flared to life, emitting a silver light that mirrored the key's glow. With a deep breath, he slid the key into the lock. A sharp click echoed through the corridor, crisp and final. The door shuddered, then creaked open, revealing a spiral staircase plunging into darkness. The whisper from his dream echoed in his mind, clearer now. The key-bearer will unlock the truth. But before they could step forward, a sound, a low, mournful hiss, rose from the depths, accompanied by a gust of wind that smelled of decay and brine. Tobin whimpered, his eyes wide with fear, but Edric's resolve hardened. "Whatever's down there," he said, his voice steady, "we'll face it together." With that, he took the first step into the abyss, the key's light guiding them into the unknown.